Today's episode is going to be straight to the point, and I want you to take this straight, no chaser. All right, because I kind of alluded to what I was going to talk about today on the last podcast about the combine and how I truly feel about it. But you're going to get the raw, uncut, unedited version of it today. And we're going to talk all things combine and all your comments as well on today's show, the LouieTeeNetwork podcast that starts now. The Louie T Network is powered by the Card Collector Series. Join me, your man, Louie T, on my journey back into the card collecting space with the Card Collector Series on YouTube. Link is in the description. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 241st installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you guys for joining me on today's show. I don't want to hold you very long because I don't have a ton of time. Why didn't y'all tell me that having twins was going to kick ass the way that it has to this point? Nobody warned me. There were people that said, hey, get them on the same feeding schedule. Make sure you put them down. You didn't tell me I was going to get my ass kicked, but it's okay. I'm going to come through on the other side better because of it. But man, I'm not going to lie to you. My ass is being kicked severely right now, but that's the party doesn't stop, and time waits for no man. So I'm not going to waste any of yours. Let's get to the proceedings this evening with a gem dropping session. Let's do it. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind. Let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T double E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So I wanted to ask you guys this question. This is something that I've been holding on to for a while. I brought it up before, and I said we were going to talk about it at a later date and time when it was pertinent. I can't think of a more pertinent time to talk about it than today. As the combine starts to get underway, we've heard from GMs. Now we're hearing from head coaches. We're hearing from some of the prospects. Tomorrow we'll start our on-the-field drills at the combine, and it got me to thinking. To me, there's no one person more synonymous with the NFL Network's coverage of the combine than one Michael Mayock. Now, as we all know, he got the job to become the GM of the Vegas Raiders, and it was a very tumultuous 3-year run for him. A lot of bad draft picks, really put the Raiders in a spot where they've still had some good football players. Not all of the draft picks have been bad, right? But they should have been further along in their process, and they should have had more talent on their team than they do because they've wasted a lot of draft picks. Now, they couldn't have foreseen that Henry Ruggs, the third, was going to kill someone with his vehicle, and be driving at ridiculous speeds. They couldn't have foreseen that, the cornerback they took out of Ohio State was going to be on socials flashing a gun and gang signs and all kinds of bullshit. They couldn't have known, but they could have known that Cleveland Farrell wasn't good enough to be a top 5 pick. They could have known one of his teammates, and they went crazy at Clemson because they got one guy that was good from Clemson. Okay. One guy that was good from Clemson, and they just figured, hell, let's just draft a whole bunch of Clemson dudes. You can't go wrong there. They're in Alabama. You can't. Well, actually, you can get bad players from both Alabama and Clemson. Not all of their players are NFL starters, right? And so they took it to that umpteenth degree, and they drafted another Clemson player in the 3rd round in Tanner Muse that was not a 3rd round nor 4th or 5th round type of pick, and he's no longer on their roster. And yes, a lot of those failed picks by the Raiders that, really put them in a position that, is not where they should be, and it's not the kind of dividends they should have reaped from no longer having Khalil Mack. When they made that trade with the Bears and they acquired all that draft capital, it put them in a position of power to really elevate them to the status of the Chiefs in that division, and that's not where they are because they missed on too many of those draft picks, if you get where I'm coming from. Alex Leatherwood should not have been a 1st-round pick. Sorry, not sorry. So I said all of that to say this. Would you be welcoming to Mike Mayock coming back to NFL Network, because I think ultimately that's what's going to happen. He's going to sit out a year, because what you do in these situations is you just let it breathe. He's still being paid by the Raiders. He has no reason to want to come back to work right away. Take some time off, let this thing decompress, let everybody forget that you stunk as a general manager, and then you just randomly show up, a year or two from now, back on the NFL Network, back home where it all started for you. And, everyone there will love him and want him back on TV. Will you want him back on TV? Will you trust his analysis? When he used to talk about banging the table for a player, we would all sit there on every single word. We're hanging on every single syllable as he's talking about. I would stand up and I would bang the table for this guy. And we would sit through 3-hour conferences as he would go down the list of prospects, and all these media members would ask him questions and they would fire away and he would answer. And you'd love Michael Mayock this time of the year because his word was gold. Does his word still carry the kind of weight that it once did with you? I can tell you where I'm coming from is, look, I know how this works. Matt Millen was a terrible GM, but Matt Millen, was able to get back onto, various networks, ultimately landing on Fox, having a, play-by-play, or excuse me, a analyst job. And, and no one talked about that anymore. He even did Lions games. You know what I'm saying? Like, time heals all wounds, right? But the difference between Matt Millen and Mike Mayock is Mike Mayock does draft analysis for a living, or at least he did. Matt Millen didn't. Okay. Matt Millen just played football for a very long time, and they figured, hey, since you played football, you know what a football player looks like. Maybe you can find some good ones to play here. But his job wasn't to actually break down these players, talk about where they rank and where they should be drafted. He got that opportunity to do that for a living because he did it on TV, and he did it at such a high level that the Raiders gave him an opportunity. John Gruden in particular gave him an opportunity, and he was terrible at it. In my mind, I look at him, I still respect him as an evaluator. He knows talented football players where he sees them. The problem is he wanted to draft guys that he believed in a round or 2 or 3 or 4 higher than they should have been drafted. He could have gotten Cleveland Farrell in the second round. He didn't have to spend a first round top 5 pick on him. You could have gotten Tanner Muse in the 5th, 6th round. You didn't spend a 3rd round pick on him. You could have gotten Alex Leatherwood in the 2nd round. I get it. It's tackle. You want to get one because they go quickly, get them while supplies last. I understand. No one was going to fight you over Alex Leatherwood. Nobody. I guarantee you. But that was his motto and his mantra. Hey, get the guy that I want to get. And you know my mantra, and I say the same thing. Get your guy when you feel the need to get your guy. And his problem was he got guys way too early, and the value simply wasn't there. For a guy that would always talk about draft value, he seemed to not understand that concept when he got the job with the Raiders. That said, if he were to come back to NFL Network in his old role, and he's not getting the lead chair back, that belongs to Daniel Jeremiah. And as long as DJ doesn't leave, he's not relinquishing that throne and title back to Mike Mayock should he show up. Mike Mayock would just have to get in where he fits in now, because DJ now owns the lead chair as NFL Network's lead draft analyst. That said, Mayock could come in as a contributor. And most of us would, some of you would cut your eye at him. A lot of us, however, would, I think, welcome him back with open arms, say, hey, man, you gave it a run. It didn't work. I know that I wouldn't be as gung-ho on his words anymore. However, when he says something, I wouldn't be like, oh man, Mike Mayock said this dude is nasty, so he's got to be nasty. I wouldn't be as, and that wasn't the way I viewed him before. If he said something, it was gospel, but you also still had to do your own work. You still had to vet what he said. But a lot of times you felt like, I can see where Mike is coming from here. Now, if you don't believe in a guy and he does, you're like, hey, you wrong, Mike. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. Okay. I said all of that to say this. I wouldn't have a problem with him coming back to NFL Network. And I ultimately believe that's what's going to happen. Give it a year or two. He'll be back on the NFL Network. But are you comfortable with Mike Mayock leading you down a draft path after his failed venture with the Raiders? I'd love to hear how you guys feel about Michael Mayock and his potential to be back on the NFL Network, because I think it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Leave it down in the comment section. Would love to hear from you on that. So let's stay with the theme of the combine. I told you this would be a combine heavy and intensive episode. So I'm going to get to your comments here in the next 2-3 minutes. I just need to say this about the combine. I think the combine is on par with the Pro Bowl in terms of watchability. It is one of the worst products that the NFL can put on. And a lot of people can't stand the NFL preseason. And yes, it's not a great product. I agree. But there is value in the NFL preseason, even if it's watching second and third string guys, some that won't even be on your team. There's still value in watching guys get snaps. There's little to no value with what happens at the combine. It's a TV show. Let's call a spade a spade. The NFL combine, and nobody does a better job of marketing their products than the NFL. Like this combine that we're going to talk about, and it is trash. And it took me about 5 or 6 years to realize, bro, what are we really actually talking about here? The best and most important parts of the combine have already taken place. Medical. And for me, if I were in Indy, I would be more concerned with what the GMs and the head coaches and these prospects have to say at the podium than anything that takes place out on the field at Indianapolis. You know, so here's why I feel the way that I feel. You know, I've already said a lot of this. I'm going to rehash it again because it makes sense and it's pertinent with the conversation that we're having. This is why I feel jaded about the combine, and I can't really stand this product anymore. I once loved the combine. It's turned into a spectacle and a show. And it's, to me, has little to no value. Here's why. The only thing I care about with the combine now is how fast you run. Well, that doesn't apply to defensive linemen. It doesn't apply to offensive linemen, because you could be a physical freak and a specimen and a tremendous athlete like Tristan Wirfs, or you could be the worst combine performer we've ever seen like Orlando Brown, and still both on par to get highest paid contract in NFL history. Both are on that track as we speak. Orlando Brown set to be a free agent. I think the Chiefs are going to block that with the franchise tag. And Tristan Wirfs just missed his first ball game, I think, in the playoffs with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers after he got hurt. The guy's been as good a right tackle as we've seen over the last 2 seasons. Okay. Same players in terms of their production on the field, totally different paths during the combine. One was a physical freak. The other couldn't have performed any worse. What does that say? The combine holds little to no value in how you perform. Another guy, Allen Robinson, I thought he had a terrible combine. Dropped the football, didn't run fast. Oh my God, Allen Robinson, he's a second-round pick. He's not all that good. Hey, you look at these other guys, a guy that I always look at, and he didn't run at the combine because he knew he wasn't going to run fast, but he caught everything, had his hat on backwards, and Laquan Treadwell, oh my God, Laquan Treadwell, he's making it look easy and effortless out there. He stinks, okay? He's barely hanging on to his NFL career by a thread right now. Don't even know where he is. You know, one minute he's in Atlanta, next minute he's in Minnesota, the next minute he's in Jacksonville. I don't know where the hell Laquan Treadwell is. Have you seen him? Where's Waldo? Where's Laquan Treadwell? I can't tell you. I know Allen Robinson's been one of the best receivers in the National Football League for the last 2-3 years running. Okay. So again, it doesn't really matter how fast you run or how well you participated in the gauntlet drill. Did you drop passes? Did the gauntlet drill eat you up? Who gives a shit? Okay. I honestly, at the receiver position, I really don't even care how fast you are, because sometimes speed and quickness are confused for one another. Really? Yeah. If you're a blazer, that's great. Like, I'll give you an example. Justin Jefferson. I just wanted to know how fast he was. Watched him on tape. Didn't seem like he was a blazer, but I said, I bet you he's a 4.4 guy. He ran like a 4.42. That's plenty fast for me. And we saw what he was able to do. The talent was there. Whether he ran a 4.52 or 4.42, honestly, I think he was still going to be a really good receiver. Okay. Keenan Allen, he couldn't run a 4.4 if you paid him and got all the training in the world, but he's still one of the best technicians in the league. DeAndre Hopkins is not a 4-4 guy, and for a stretch there, before he got injured last season, you could make a case that he was the best receiver in all of football. Michael Thomas wasn't a 4-4 guy before all these injuries and having not played essentially in 2 years. He was one of the best receivers in football. Speed doesn't mean a damn thing if you know how to get open at the NFL level. Now, where it does matter for me, where speed is an issue, is corner. Okay? Running back is another position. I'd like to know how fast you are. I'd like to know what I'm getting myself into here. Okay? These are positions that I would like to see how fast you run. Okay? Linebacker, how fast are you really? Okay? And do you play to that speed? That's another thing that I want to see. But certain positions, speed is important. Okay, that's all I really care about. Cornerback, I definitely want to know how fast you are, because the difference between running a 4-4-7 and a 4-5-7 is the difference between you being able to play man-to-man coverage and you needing to be primarily in a zone defense, a zone-heavy defense, cover 3, cover 2, cover 4, that type of thing. So I need to know how fast you are as a corner, and then how oily are your hips and your ankles, okay? How quickly can you change directions? How fluidly? Because again, all of those things matter at the NFL level as well. But for running backs, how fast are you? Can you catch the ball? That's all I care about. I can watch a guy going through the running back drills, catching the football, and I can tell if he's a natural catcher of the football or if he's a guy that's going to fight the football and be a first and second down back primarily. And I can look at a guy and say, okay, he's got some third down Nyheim Hines capabilities in him. Okay, those are the things you see at the combine. But again, there ain't a lot you could take from the combine. All right, I don't really give a shit about what a lot of these guys do from a number standpoint. The bench press is cool. That's nice. We don't even get to see that. Most of the things that we don't see are the most important things that happen at the combine. The things that we actually get to watch, to me, garbage. I don't give a shit. The football on the stick, who gives a shit about that? How quickly a guy can weave in and out of cones and keep his head up around the bag and not look down. Oh, that is awesome. How many times are you going to do that in the game? How many times are you going to start on your belly and get up and go through a whole bunch of bags? Who gives a shit? Honestly, I don't. The combine, to me, honestly, other than speed, and we can get some of these numbers at the pro day, but to me, the combine numbers are more legit. Now, if you've got an injury or, you were nursing something, or you just went out there and you did it, but you can run faster, you just had a bad day, it happens. That's what the pro day is for. But honestly speaking, the combine is useless. It's useless. We get all excited about it. We talk about, oh my God, we're going to look for this guy. Half of these dudes aren't even going to compete. They'll get there on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. And you know what they'll say? Their agent will get in their ear. So you know what? Probably don't need to go out there and do anything. And then we'll hear last minute, well, he's got an ankle, so he's going to wait until his pro day. We're going to hear that at least 7 to 10 times over the weekend with guys that we want to see. The combine is overrated. All right. It's overhyped. It's a TV show made for dummies like me that watch. And you know what? If I didn't have to, I wouldn't. But I always tell you guys this. I watch so you don't have to. I'm going to do you the same solid I do for you every year. And I'm going to waste hours of my life that I can't get back watching the underwear Olympics, because this shit doesn't matter. This isn't football. This isn't football. I'm more intrigued by the Senior Bowl than I am the combine. So there you have it. So with that said, let's get to the comment section and see what you guys have to say. I got a super chat here from Luck. Thank you for the super chat, Luck. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy Luck writes, "We are commanders. Bum, bum, bum." Yeah. Bum, 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 bum. We are commanders. Bum, 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 bum. Thank you for that super chat, Luck. Greatly appreciate you. Terry Maples, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, my guy. Terry Maples writes, Lou Muma in the second, then McKinley the third in the third. It's amazing, like this is why I'm not the biggest fan of mock drafts, but I understand that just like fantasy football. I'm not a fantasy football guy, but I understand its place in the pantheon of being a fan, or just enjoying football in general. Same thing with mock drafts. I'm not the biggest fan because it's so hard to predict what's going to happen and who's going to do what. And I tend to at least want to wait until after, the combine and a lot of these pro days before, because guys can shoot up. A great example of this is Jamin Davis, Washington's first round pick last year. I had him listed as a third, fourth round pick, and then his pro day happens. He measures out at 6'3", 234, runs a 4.3, 40 or whatever, 4.41, whatever it was. It's somewhere in that general vicinity. Explosiveness off the charts with his, vert and his broad jump and all that. These numbers are off the charts. It forces people to go back, watch the tape, and they convince themselves that this guy is it. And he goes in the first round. So that's going to happen with, 2 or 3 other guys, because it happens every year. And so it's hard to say what they will do, but that's what you want us to do. And we'll see what they ultimately decide to do. They could end up packaging up picks, and we don't even have the picks that you're referencing. They could end up going to someone else for something. You never know. You know what I mean? So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I'm going to put my mock draft out a lot earlier this year than I have in the past years, because I understand that there is a need to do so, and there is an appetite out there from the masses that want to consume a mock draft. So that'll be coming sooner rather than later. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to the comment section. If you want to skip to the front of the line, you guys know exactly how to do that. Using the super chat function is the best way to do that. If you want to have your comment read, just simply use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read. So Johnny 68740, thank you for being a member of the MOBB writes, what's up, my guy? Let's get this show on the road. We have already done that. I know I was a little bit tardy, but I had a lot going on anyway. Thank you for being here, though. And let me give a shout out real quick to Michael Void for being the first in the comment section. He said, going to be a great podcast. I can already tell. Well, I hope this is meeting your standards of a great podcast. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But either way, Michael, thank you for being the first in the comment section. Truly do appreciate you. Let's see if we got any more comments here. Mike Lowry writes, help me out. I'm not in love with these quarterbacks, so say all are available at 11 plus Sauce Gardner plus Derek Stingley Jr. You still going with the quarterback? Yeah, I am. If I love one of them, in Washington, trust me, they love one of these 6 quarterbacks. If all 6 of them are available, they're going to take a quarterback. I would bet any amount of money. I would bet my entire channel that if all 6 of these quarterbacks had not been touched, that lid was still on top of the quarterback position, Washington would pop it at 11. Guarantee it. The assumption is all 6 will not be available by the time we get to 11. And maybe the one that they loved, or maybe they loved 2 of them and both of them are gone. That's when they would then turn their, focus elsewhere to a different position. But trust me, I think of the 6 quarterbacks that I view, and they're 6, and I've already, run those guys down to you. Of the 6 quarterbacks that are going to be there, that I think are draftable in the first 2 days, I think 2 of the quarterbacks Washington probably feels really high on. And I think there's a third that they like, but I'm not sure they pull the trigger at 11. I think the rest of those guys, they'd be interested in them in the second round, if at all. So we'll see what happens. Yes, to answer your question, if all 6 of the quarterbacks are still there, that lid on the quarterback position is still sealed, and we get to pop the top, yeah, they're taking a quarterback without question. F. Altus, thank you for being a member of the MOBB writes, can you compile a list of first round picks with military background for research purposes? Pop, 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 pop. Shots fired to Ron Rivera. Shots fired in the direction of head coach Ron Rivera. He's not going to do that this year. I assure you, he got caught up last year in, wanting to find, because last year was more about culture, right? Like, oh, we got to get the right guys that fit the culture we're trying to build here in Washington. That's gone out the window because there was so much goodwill built up in that first year going into that offseason that everybody was on cloud nine, including Ron. And so Ron felt like he could get reckless and do things according to the culture. This year, Ron's like, hey, I'll trade for Deshaun Watson. I don't give a shit about culture. I'm trying to win some ball games. So the whole narrative has flipped and switched. So you don't have to worry about background of military background and for research purposes. FL2, she a damn fool, man. Got a super chat here from my guy JP John Perez, who writes, Honey Badger to DC perhaps or nah? I could see them wanting a veteran to help orchestrate that defense, and he would fit. Now, after playing with Patrick Mahomes and playing in 2 Super Bowls, nearly playing in a third, is Washington where you're really looking to go if you're Tyrann Mathieu? I mean, obviously he can get paid some good money here, but is Washington really where you are looking to go? I mean, that's the real question you have to ask yourself. Like, remember, we were interested in him the last time he was a free agent, and he chose Kansas City. Why? Because he wanted to win. He even avoided us the year where we were interested, and he went to Houston for a year, if you recall that year. So this is a guy that is essentially run away from Washington at all costs throughout his career, because we were interested in him when he first became a free agent. When he left Arizona the first time, he went to Houston for a year. We were still interested when he left Houston. Then he went to Kansas City. But we signed Landon Collins. So again, we'll see what happens. Maybe the third time's the charm with Tyrann Mathieu and him coming to Washington. But I've always said guys like him don't necessarily fit the time frame that we're in. But Rivera's trying to win now. So now is as good a time as any if you're going to sign a veteran that you think it can complete your defense or at least help it get to the level that you think it should be at. He's the type of guy that I think could do that. So I wouldn't be shocked if they did that. I wouldn't be shocked if they signed a guy like Tyrann Mathieu, but we'll see what happens. Let's see. Rich, thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, when you first brung this up, I had never thought about it, but since I have, and I wouldn't mind him at NFL Network, but I wouldn't trust what he says because of his Raiders tenure. He's ultimately going to be back on the NFL Network at some point. I feel confident in that. I don't feel 100% confident, but I feel like 85% confident that he's going to sit down, let the dust settle, smoke clear, and then the NFL Network is going to approach him about coming back on as a analyst for the draft, and he's going to take it because he's not doing anything. And you know what's better than some money? More money. And so he's going to make more money, and he's actually going to have a purpose. Like, no one wants to just sit at home and do nothing. And he'll be back out on the prowl. He'll be back out in the draft circuits. He'll be back at Mobile. He'll be back around his people, his peers, people that he respects, doing what he loves to do, which is talk draft and talk football, talk ball. So I think he'll be back out there. If not next year, the year after that. But I do think the perception of him will have changed, right? He won't be the gospel. His word won't be, it's weight in gold. You'll respect his opinion, but it won't be the end all be all. It won't be mic drop. Oh, Mike Mayock said, and drop the mic. I don't think it'll be ever that again. So I think we're kind of in agreement there. Let's see. Any more comments? Mega 412 writes, we might draft a quarterback in the second, sign Trubisky, OJ Howard, Russell Gage, and a few more players and start the season. I wouldn't have a problem with any of those players. I'm not the biggest Russell Gage fan, but Russell Gage would be if you don't bring back DeAndre Carter. He would serve in that role, and I don't even know if he's the return man that DeAndre Carter was for us. So I'd pass on Russell Gage and just bring back DeAndre Carter if we're being honest with one another, because DeAndre Carter showed us he could play some receiver last year too. So I'd love OJ Howard. I'd love, bringing, look, Trubisky at this point, I've allowed myself, because I'm a Mitchell Trubisky apologist. His mama named him Mitchell. I'm going to call him Mitchell. I don't know where all this Mitch talk comes from. That Mitch talk. I don't know where all that Mitch talk came from, but his mama named him Mitchell. I'm gonna call him Mitchell. I was a Mitchell Trubisky apologist when he was in Chicago. I thought he got a raw deal there. I like Mitchell Trubisky. I don't love Mitchell Trubisky, but if you're telling me he's the best of the guys that are going to be available, I'd tell you you're probably right. And I'd sign up for him. Again, he's not the long-term answer, or at least we don't believe he is. And so you're still drafting a guy. That's the guy that we ultimately want to see if he's going to be able to get it done or not. And if that guy isn't, knocking our socks off, there's always next year, right? There's always next year. So I wouldn't be shocked if we spent a first-round pick on a quarterback. But I think the likelihood right now is that we'll end up spending a second-round pick on one. But I wouldn't be shocked because the league has a way of humbling draft classes of quarterbacks that aren't great. And we think, every year this is what happens to the quarterbacks. They get pushed up. Yeah, but that's when they're good. There's some years, like I always go back to that 2011 year with Gabbert and Ponder and Jake Locker. I always go back to that year where they get pushed up and they all stunk. But, as we've gotten closer to present day, teams aren't doing that as much with quarterbacks. Like they're properly slotting these guys for the most part. Every now and again you'll get a couple of drafts where guys get pushed up, but for the most part, if your draft class isn't any good, they'll do you like again, there's always 19 with Daniel Jones and Dwayne Haskins. They had no business being first round picks, if you ask me. Neither one of them. Should have just been Kyler Murray and that's it. But we'll see. It's going to be interesting. I'll just say that. I will just say that. Ree writes, what up, Lou? What up, Ree? Do you think Chris Olave of Ohio State could be available at 27? Yes, I do. Again, I don't see him as a number one receiver in this league. If you're the Buccaneers, why would you want, unless you're not going to have Chris Godwin back, which is a possibility, right? He would be the perfect Chris Godwin replacement. Chris Olave would. But if you've already got Chris Godwin, you don't need another one. That's what Olave would be. You would be replacing one Chris with another Chris that does the exact same thing. Chris Godwin is at best a low-end one, but he's more of a dynamic two. That's what Olave is in the league. He's not a number one. He's a number two wide receiver. And that's okay because you need those to win as well. So I think he'll be there for you at 27. Twin D, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Twin D, writes, what's up, LT? What's up, Twin D? I'm looking at the Cowboys' supposed first place schedule. What the hell? To me, it's nowhere as tough as our 2021 first place schedule. So, the schedule game. It's not one that you really want to play, especially this time of the year. We don't know who's going to be better, who's going to be worse. I mean, we haven't even gotten a free agency yet. We don't know what teams are going to do what. However, this is the thing that we knew going into our first place schedule last year, and that was the quarterbacks we were going to face if they were healthy. We were going to get Justin Herbert week 1. We were going to get Josh Allen week 3. You know what I'm saying? We knew we were going to get Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson. We knew that. They don't have that on their schedule, and that's okay. Like, I don't care about what the Cowboys schedule looks like. I care about what our schedule looks like and what we can do, because ultimately that will take care of itself. The Buccaneers don't have Tom Brady, so all of a sudden that Buccaneers game isn't as scary as it was once before. Now, if they get Deshaun Watson, it's still a scary game. But if they don't, guess what? That Tampa Bay game doesn't look as scary. As a matter of fact, the third place team in that division, which is where we finished, that might be a more scarier game than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That whole division looks like it's going to stink right now, right? The NFC South. So it really doesn't matter who you play. But if Aaron Rodgers is back, that Green Bay game is going to be pretty damn tough. I'd much rather take my chances playing against the, Chicago Bears. I'll take my chances playing against the Bears instead of playing against the Packers if Aaron Rodgers is back in Green Bay. So you see where I'm going with this? Now, again, I don't remember what division we're playing. We may all be playing Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins and the Vikings. We might be playing that whole division, but if not, I'd much rather take my chances playing against, the Bears versus the Packers. You see where I'm going with this? If Aaron Rodgers is there. But, at the end of the day, we'll see what happens. You know how these schedules, how they go. So anyway, Let's see. Reed writes, Lou, we need to go with Trask. Let's see what he's got. Resign Godwin and Jensen to go with Trask. We won't get anywhere on the Blaine train. They have no intentions of starting Blaine Gabbert. None. They want to get a guy out here on the market. If they can find one that fits what they're doing, great. If not, I've always said that Kyle Trask needs an opportunity. So we'll see. I think ultimately it'll be a veteran that'll come in, not Blaine Gabbert veteran, but another veteran that'll come in to compete, and Kyle Trask will have an opportunity as well. We'll see what happens. Pac-Man D3 writes, I know you're happy no matter what because you're a Grizz fan, but I know how Ja's been playing recently makes you love that graded Ja pull that much more. Keep up the great work, man. It does. I mean, I was going to love it anyway, as you mentioned, because I'm a massive Grizzlies fan, but I mean, the value of that card, when I first pulled it, the value of, and I don't want this to take over this, segment. The value of that card when I first pulled it was $1,300. Last time I checked, and this has been a while ago, this is before he went on this ridiculous MVP chase where he scored 44 or more points in 3 of his last 4 games. That card was valued at $3,000 at that point. So now, and I'm thinking about getting it regraded because I got it, out of an encased pack, and they got it as a 9. There's nothing wrong with that card. I'm gonna try to get it PSA graded and see if I can get it to come back as a 10. That would have its value, value skyrocket. But anyway, enough of that, because I know a lot of you don't care about that. But you're right. I'm loving it even more. Pac-Man D3. Mega 412 writes, everybody thinks Trubisky's going to be an easy signing. There's real buzz around his name. Damn shame we might be in a bidding war for this guy. Shaking my head. That was something I was going to bring up on tomorrow's show, tomorrow night, on the Command Post, is that, once upon a time we were sitting here like, oh, man, we might have to get Mitch Trubisky. No, Mitchell, okay, is in high demand, okay? Mitchell will have his pick of the litter because, again, that's what we've been reduced to. There's not a lot out here. The draft doesn't get you excited. There will be no veterans. Did you hear what Pete Carroll said today? I'm going to talk about that in garbage time here in a second. But Aaron Rodgers isn't going anywhere, as I've said all season. Russell Wilson isn't going anywhere, as I've said all off season. Derek Carr isn't going anywhere, as I've said all off season. The only guy that can change teams, that can help you win a Super Bowl right away, is Deshaun Watson, and we still don't know what his legal situation is ultimately going to amount to. So Mitchell Trubisky may ultimately be the best of the rest that's available. Luza, the Redskins fan, says, where do you think Watson lands after Miami GM said they are closing the door on a Watson trade? I don't know. I mean, but Miami had already closed the door. That's why Brian Flores was no longer there. They disagreed on what the future of the quarterback position should look like. They closed that door. The minute Brian Flores got fired is the day that they slammed the door shut on any Watson deal. Watson, I think more likely than not, ends up in the NFC when it's all said and done. And I keep circling Tampa Bay, but we'll see. Just because he wants to play in Tampa doesn't mean that's where he ultimately plays. But I don't know where he's going to end up. I truly don't know. It's going to be really, really interesting to see, however. Reese says, do you like Trask, Lou? I saw your one-on-one on him. Could he have improved with a redshirt season under Tom and Uncle Bruce? I think our roster suits his talents. Your offensive line is tailor-made for a guy that can't move, and Kyle Trask can't move. But transitioning from Tom Brady to Kyle Trask is the perfect transition, which is why you drafted him, because you knew he was a statue and you were already currently employing a statue and needing to protect one. It hurts that you just lost your center, your guard to retirement. But at the end of the day, that offensive line is made to protect the quarterback. And Trask is a guy that, if given time, he can do some really good things. So we'll see. I wanted to see growth out of him. And, what better tutelage can you get than being under Tom Brady for, a season and then having Uncle Bruce be in your ear. So we'll see what happens with Kyle Trask. John Perez writes, you have to take into account with the fact that our staff in 2019 was terrible and we had no idea what to do with our roster. That still doesn't change the fact that the guys that were in control of the draft, that had been working the draft boards the entire time, didn't want anything to do with Dwayne Haskins in 2019. Not in the first round, at least. And Daniel Snyder came down and vetoed any decision and said, hey, no, we're doing this at 15. So William Edwards writes, just looking for some draft names to get excited about. And you'll have plenty of those. That's another thing. And I omitted that when I talked about the combine. That's another thing. There'll be 4 or 5 guys that I had no idea who they were going into the process that I'll walk away saying, oh man, that tight end ran a 4.6, caught everything, looked fluid out there. That's another name to add to the list of tight ends that I'm intrigued by. You know, there'll be a running back from a small school, never heard of him. He'll go out there, catch it well, move well. And I'll say, you know what, that guy's pretty impressive. I remember Brandon Cooks was like that. Now, he didn't play at Southwest Louisiana State. Brandon Cooks played at Oregon State, but still, I didn't know a lot about Brandon Cooks coming into the combine, but I left that combine saying Brandon Cooks is one of the best receivers in this year's draft class, and he's turned out to be that throughout his career in the NFL. So you'll get some of that every now and again as well. Let's see. I think that's it. We're going to get out of here. Let's go ahead and quickly transition to our final segment of the show, and that's garbage time. I want to thank all of you for participating in social media maneuvers, and sorry to all of you who had comments that I didn't have a chance to get to. Maybe next time. So quickly, I just wanted to leave on this note. Speaking of the combine, this has been a combine heavy show. Pete Carroll, and I told you, to me, the most important things that happen at the combine, we don't get to see. And one of those things is when, you know, GMs and coaches step up to the podium and kind of give you a briefing of what their offseason looks like and, you know, what the future may hold for their teams. And Pete Carroll said, look, when the phone rings, John picks it up, John being John Schneider, the GM of the Seattle Seahawks. He picks up the phone and tells any team that asks about Russell Wilson that he's not available. It's a pretty simple statement. You call, you ask, we tell you he's not available, we hang up phone. Simple. If Russell Wilson was just on some show the other day where he pretty much said, hey, you know, Washington, you know, a lot of family back that way, you know, grew up a Washington fan at one point. And there's a lot of love in that area, but I'm a Seahawk. And until I'm not a Seahawk, I'm a Seahawk, and I want to be a Seahawk. So if Russell Wilson's saying that publicly, and the Seahawks are saying, hey, if Russ doesn't want out, we want Russ. I mean, who didn't see that coming, though? I told you the Browns weren't going to trade Baker Mayfield. I told you the Seahawks weren't going to trade Russell Wilson. I told you the Raiders weren't going to trade Derek Carr. And I told you the Packers weren't going to trade Aaron Rodgers. And if Rodgers wants a trade, he's already said, I don't want to come to Washington. So at the end of the day, when you look at the landscape of quarterbacks, there's not going to be this big fish out there for anybody to go out, cast their reel, and see if they can reel him in. You know, Carson Wentz may be available. Nobody wanted Carson Wentz last offseason where there was still a little bit of shine. There's no luster there anymore. You know, the Colts, I don't think they're going to release him either. You know, listening to their GM, Chris Ballard, who I love, talk about the growth of Carson Wentz and what he may have learned from last season. I don't think they're going to move on from him yet, but we'll see. That remains to be seen. At the end of the day, I mean, what are the Colts going to do, really? You move on from Wentz, and then what? And then what? So I don't see them doing that. It doesn't make any sense for them. But there's not a lot out there, and the Seahawks don't want any smoke. They don't want to end up in the quarterback wilderness. Who does? Nobody does. That's why you don't make a foolish move like trade Russell Wilson. It doesn't benefit them now, and it doesn't benefit them into the future. Just like in the NBA, you can't trade a superstar and get equal value back. The Raiders traded Khalil Mack. I would love to take a look at what they've done with those picks they got from Khalil Mack, because I can assure you right now, nothing. Okay, nothing. The Browns got King's ransom in that Falcons deal that allowed the Falcons to draft Julio. I'd love to go back and look at what they acquired with that ransom. Washington gave up King's ransom for Robert Griffin III in that draft with the Rams. I already know what the Rams got out of that draft, out of all of those draft picks that they got from Washington. Nothing. Zero. Zilch. They sent all of the guys that they got in the trade to center field, to midfield for the coin toss when Jeff Fisher was being petty. Trash across the board. So I said all that to say this. Trading Russell Wilson makes no sense now, and it doesn't make sense into the future. Now, if he wants out and there's a mutual, agreement that we need to part, okay, let's get something because he doesn't want to be here, and we need to get something on his way out. That's not where we are with that process. And for Seattle, it doesn't make any sense. So anyway, I digress. That's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the 241st installment of the Louie T Network podcast. You know what it is. If you haven't already done so, please, on the way out, hit the subscribe button for more great content. Turn on your notification bell so you don't miss a thing. And also, leave a comment in the comment section if you're watching this on playback. I'd love to read what you have to say about any of the topics we've talked about today. I'm your man, Louie T, asking you to get off the bench, get in the game, and kick it with me, your man, Louie T. I will start my combine coverage tomorrow. For all the shit I talked about the combine, I'm still going to watch, and I'm still going to be here after each day, breaking down the events of that day's proceedings. And we'll do it for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and finally wrapping up the combine with the DBs on Sunday. So stay here on the Louie T Network for continued coverage of the NFL offseason. And now we get into the 2022 NFL Scouting Combine. If you're a Washington fan, I'll be live tomorrow night for the Command Post. Nothing has changed. But until then, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. You guys have a great evening, and I will see you guys tomorrow. If you are a Patreon supporter or a member of the Mob Squad, my quarterback rankings will be up within the next 2 hours. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Until then, you guys take care.